This one, I wanted to talk about king position, one of our 5 elements. And in this whole masterclass series, I really want you to think about the 5 elements. They are, once again, time, development, pawn structure, space, the material count. We all love the material count, and king position. So this is like the 5th element that we're going to consider. And in our game today in the masterclass today, there's a couple of things that I want you to particularly note. The first thing is that we're going to be attacking a king's position. And when we talk about a king's position, one of the things that we really, if there's one thing you come away with is this masterclass, is how good a defensive piece a knight is to a castled position. What do I mean? First of all, I always think it's very, very important that we're all on the same page and we understand, first of all, the castle position, and in fact 2 types of castle position. So in this position features both castle position. White has fianchettoed his bishop. Black has not. So whose king is safer? Is the white king safer or the black king safer? Well, it's not really an answer that we can give. It really based on the position. In most cases, grandmasters prefer a castle position with a fianchetto bishop. The fianchetto bishop adds that extra layer of protection. However, it also carries the seeds of weaknesses. We can imagine that the light square pieces get traded, light square bishops gets traded off. This pawn is on the G3 square, man. There's some weaknesses around the king. Conversely, when we look at black's king and we see his pawn shield on H7, G7, F7, it's a really marvelous pawn shield. It will be black's decision whether or not he wants to push his pawn shield and weaken pawn shield. The crucial part, though, is that kings love the protections of their knights. The knight on F3 and the knight on F6. So long as those pieces remain around the castled king, it's going to be very, very hard for an attack to be successful. And in fact, Bent Larsen took it a step further, and he said that when he has a knight on the F8 square, he can't get mated. Words to make us think. Now, let's begin our lesson. I'm going to go back to the starting position. The following game not only inspired me, it's inspired thousands and thousands of people. It is a game between Lev Polygaevsky and Rashid Nejmadinov. Nejmadinov was very unknown in the Western world. He lived behind the Iron Curtain in the Soviet Union, and amongst the Soviet and Russian players, he was feared as a fantastic attacker. I was having dinner once with Lev Polygaevsky where Lev said, Yasser, it's terrible. I beat this guy, 10 times. And he beat me once. And I would trade all of my victories for his victory against me. Such was this victory that we are about to see. Also, I'd just like to share a story from a book that Grandmaster Lev Albert wrote. And I'm afraid I'm going to get the names wrong. But the story is good, and I encourage you to read Lev's book. The story is about a grandmaster who is qualified for the Soviet championship. Like these Soviet championships were enormously difficult events with, 18, 19, 20, 21 person round robins. They were very, very hard to qualify for. You have to imagine the territory of the Soviet Union, and it was so big. How many qualifiers from all of these republics that comprised the Soviet Union? Well, out of a Republic of Russia and Siberia, and I think it was Teshkovsky, I'm not 100% sure, this very surprising young, youthful player has qualified to the great Soviet championships. And the authorities in Moscow, the Central Chess Club and the Soviet Chess Federation thought, well, I mean, this is really, really unfair. This poor guy, is going to be coming from Siberia to compete with the greatest masters in the Soviet Union. And all of those masters, except for him, have trainers and seconds and coaches and whole entourages of people who are supporting their player. And this poor guy is going to enter the competition alone. We have to appoint a trainer for him. So from the Ukraine, they had gotten this trainer to come to meet Teshkovsky. And again, it may not be Teshkovsky's name, to meet the Siberian qualifier in the Soviet championships, and said, here, a few days of training, Moscow, and so on. The tournament begins. The first round, Teshkovsky is going to play against Tigran Petrosyan, and the trainer from Kiev says, well, it's better that we not prepare and waste our time. Tigran will grasp the e5 square. He will strangle you and you will die. He will crush you. Better not to prepare. And just as the trainer had explained, that's exactly what happened. Tigran got a positional grip and crushed the poor guy. Oh, next round. He's playing Nejmadinov. And again, the trainer says, it's better that we don't prepare. No matter what we do, somewhere Rashid is going to sacrifice a knight. There's nothing you can do, and he's going to checkmate you, which is precisely what happened. Well, at this point, Teshkovsky fired the guy and asked him to leave and return to Kiev. And the trainer understandably said, well, why did I get fired? I told him the truth, what was going to happen, and he took it out on me. And sure enough, Rashid had done precisely that. He was such a feared attacking player. He is playing against Lev Polygaevsky. He is black. And this is an old King's Indian move order that, has not become quite so popular today as it was when it was played. And it's a strange thing about opening fashion. It comes in and out, and you're never really sure why the Berlin, which was played a century ago, fell out of fashion, and then it became more fashionable, and then this old Indian fell out of fashion, and then suddenly somebody discovers it. So the idea is black invites a trade of queens, but the strange thing is this middle game position is actually not that bad for black. Black's king is in the center, but with this very strong move, c7, c6, taking control over the b5 and d5 squares, the black king ends up on a very nice square, very well protected on c7, and after further moves like a5 and knight a6 and knight c5 and bishop e6, Black can look forward to the future with confidence. His king is not that weak. All right, let's go back. So after e5, Paulo understandably plays the move e4. Again, there is a line that goes knight f3, e4, knight g5, bishop f5. Now, a very important game was played by Garry Kasparov-White versus Jonathan Spielman, where Garry Kasparov played the move g4 and ended up winning a very, very sharp and very difficult game. There is a very nice trick that White should be careful not to fall for, and that is queen c2, pinning the pawn and attacking the pawn on e4, queen e7. Now, at first glance, after the move f2, f3, knight c6, e3, this pawn appears to be a goner until you see this move. Oops! Knight takes d4, pawn takes, and pawn takes. With a discovered check, Black, of course, is doing very well. Which explains why Polygaevsky played e4 and not knight f3. There is the variation knight f3, e5, e4 by Black. That wasn't what Polygaevsky wanted. He played e4, hoping to transpose into a King's Indian. Rashid captured and played g6. Okay, g6. Well, White has what we might call the restrictive center. What that means is that these pawns on c4 and e4 restrict Black from breaking out with attacking moves like d6, d5, and f5. And White is hoping that from behind his restrictive center, he'll develop his pieces very nicely and end up with a central advantage, and isn't it wonderful? But now we have to look at White's scheme of development. First of all, the move queen d2 looks very strange to us, right? Because aren't we just putting the queen in front of the bishop, and why would we do that? Well, Paulo has a very clear idea in mind. He anticipated that this bishop will be fianchettoed and developed on the long diagonal. So he wanted his bishop on b2 to counteract against the bishop on g7, and he wanted the bishop on b2 to be defended by his queen. Castles. Now we come to actually a rather challenging situation for White. White has to think about his scheme of development. What would be ideal for White? What would White want to do? What I'd like to ask you, the class, is to give me, in your minds, a scheme of development for White's pieces that you like. So I just want to hear where the light squared bishop is going to go, where the knight on e2 is going, knight on g1 is going to go, pardon me. Where is White's king going to go? I just need a setup, Takes as castle queen side, h4, h5, sack, mate. Bishop d3, the best square. Okay, you've answered one thing for the bishop. I'd like to be able to achieve knight d5 and trade heavily on f6. f4, knight f3, bishop e2. Kingside castles, but with bishop d3 and knight f3 seems simple. Bishop d3, knight e2, f3. Bishop e2, knight f3. Okay. Okay, so now I'm also seeing lots of castles queenside. And I'm also hearing that the knight should go to f3, the bishop should go to e2, and the king should go to castles, and so on. Those of you who thought that white should play knight f3 and bishop e2, I have a quick question for you. How are you going to defend the e4 pawn? Keep in mind that white's king is still in the center of the board, so that the move knight takes e4 would win a concession from white. It's not so easy to get in that bishop e2, knight f3, right? For those of you who would like to castle, very good. Now, when the kings are on opposite flanks of one another, it's incumbent upon the players to attack the other side. That's why I saw the h4, h5 sac-sac mate idea. But keep in mind that, well, black is ready also to unleash his attack with the move a5 and a4. For example, if you play king b1, a4, and you think you can capture, I'm not necessarily going to go sac-sac mate, but I'll be very happy to trade the a7 pawn for the e4 pawn. And also keep in mind that, I've got ideas here. So maybe you want to play, after castles, a5, a move like f3 to stop a4, and you thinking to yourself you're going to go sac-sac mate. Well, it's a challenge because black might have similar ideas of sac-sac and mate. You're crashing through against the g6 pawn. Black is crashing through against the b3 pawn, and it's a double-edged affair. For those of you who wanted to play bishop d3 and knight e2, well, that's what Lev Polygaevsky chose. He played bishop d3. And now, in a certain kind of way, the shoe is now on the other foot from black's perspective. We can visualize what white wants to do. White wants to play knight e2 and castles. Then he's completed his development. And how is black going to complete his development? The bishop on c8, the rook on a8. It doesn't make a nice impression. How are you going to bring the pieces out? Well, if you just bring the pieces out, for example, bishop e6, knight e2, queen d7, castles, rook e8, rook e1, you're kind of hitting a dead end. Black's game, all things considered, is rather lifeless. White has ideas of knight f4, knight d5, or simply knight d4, and maybe ideas of f4 and f5, and black's pieces really have no good plans. Why is that? Well, it returns to the restrictive center. As long as white's pawns are going to remain upon the c4 as well as e4 squares, black's game is going to be cramped and suffer. Whenever you're playing against the restrictive pawn structure, you need to attack that pawn structure. That's why it's often referred to as a bind. White gets a bind, such as the Maroczy bind, and you have to play very actively, else you are going to suffer a cramp. And that's why I really, really like this move by Rashid. Knight f6 to g4, even though the knight is already developed, it steps aside in favor of the move f7, f5, so that you can attack the center. Also, in a very rather cheeky kind of way, be careful that this bishop might actually pop out to the h6 square, especially after moves like castles long might be played. Hi, Dan.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so knight g4. Let me just see what good square. Very good. Knight ge2. Polygaevsky likely resisted playing the move knight f3, not because he was necessarily afraid of the move f5. He probably simply didn't like the move knight g4 to e5, attacking the knight. And if there was a trade, he would realize, of course, that black is about to sink a knight on the d4 square, and black has an easy game. That was why Palu played the move knight e2. When I started the lecture, I started from the perspective of the castled position. One side had a knight on f6 and a bishop on e7. The other side had a knight on f3 and a fianchetto. When the knight is missing from its most important defensive post, it means that that player can be vulnerable to an attack. And I really love this move, queen h4. Very brutal kind of an attack, to be sure, but it just hits this pawn on f2. Black is trying to be his obnoxious best. He's not going to let white just sit on a beautiful space, bind, but he's going to come at white with very, very active and aggressive moves. A mistake. Knight g3, a mistake. Obviously, black cannot castle. Oops! Checkmate in one. That's not very good, but white needs to defend his pawn on f2. And how should he do it? He chose to block the attack with the move knight g3, and this was it was a mistake by Palu to do that. Palu actually had to play the move g3, attacking the queen. Black has a choice. He could move his queen all the way back to d8, so that, with this move queen d8, what black did is he lost some time, but look at all of the weak light squares that he has provoked in white's camp. On a good day, he's ready to play knight e5 and occupy the f3 square. Hence the move f4 to stop the knight from retreating, and now knight f6. So again, black's idea is to occupy some nice light squares that he's weakened. He's traded some time, development, in order to get some weak squares that he can attack. Another idea that black had is black could just hang around with his queen, not necessarily inviting queen h3, knight f4, but he could hang around with his queen like this. So that, again, he's got ideas of knight e5 or knight d4, again, eyeballing this f3 square. These are just the typical types of plans that black has. After knight g3, I think it's time for our first question. Okay. Let me see. Oops. Gosh darn it. Every time I do that, I really, really hate it. I hit just one stupid key and the whole position changes. Okay, let me scroll down here. Okay. Okay. White's got this great center, the restrictive center. This bishop is kind of an annoying little target, but the bishop might be able to hide itself away. In this position, what would you do? What would you do? Forstraw was fast out of the box with a bishop d4, knight takes f2. Ooh, that looks like a bishop h6 looks wild. Okay, so one idea is that the bishop on h6 hits the queen with a nice tempo. If the queen tries to hang around, you could certainly harass the queen with a move like knight d4. The queen would have to probably step back to the d1 square, and, well, we could keep continuing. Bishop h6 is actually a very, very, very nice move. There's a stronger one. And a couple of you have definitely seen it. f5, Nick tab 20. f5 to attack the center. That's actually very, very key, that black needs that move f5 to break up the white center. As it turns out, exactly in this position, black has a very caveman-like approach that is very powerful. The move bishop d4, exclam, just says to white, hey man, defend the f2 pawn. You still can't castle because it's checkmate. And if you play a move like rook f1, well, I'll snip a pawn, and I'm a pawn up. This guy is falling. This knight is ready. This knight is ready to leap into the e5 square, and black has an attack as well as material advantage. In short, black stands better. So, really the only move is knight d1 in order to defend this pawn on f2. Now the move f5 takes, bishop takes, bishop takes. Exactly in this position, what would be your move? What would you do in this position as black? Rook takes f5, or rook takes f5, knight takes f5. Sack the rook. Bravo! Rook on a8 to e8 check, developing with tempo. Now, at the end of this whole variation, you can see the results. Black is completely developed. White's king is messed up. His knights, his pieces are on the first, second, and third ranks. And furthermore, black's f-pawn is about to act as a battering ram, playing the moves f4, f3, and also this knight is going to come to this beautiful, beautiful outpost. In short, black is winning. It's a very unusual tactic that occurs very, very early, and this move bishop to d4 could have really punished white's bad move, knight g3. Instead, Rashid played knight e5. Now Paula had castles, and Rashid played f5 with the very powerful idea of f4 followed by f3 and checkmating White's king. After f5, I suspect what happened right here is that Rashid was a good customer of Palu. As Palu mentioned in the dinner to me, he had won many, many nice games against him. And so Palu was probably reluctant to capture the pawn on f5, which was his best move. After takes, Queen d4, very powerful move, putting the bishop in a pin. Rook d1, defending the bishop. Trades, 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 trades. It's like the vacuum lady came in and just cleared all the pieces off the board, and a draw is going to be the likely result for 6 versus 6, and the game is completely balanced. Palu, to avoid that draw, played the move f2, f3, and this was a move that plays with fire. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay. Put on your attacking caps, your thinking caps, and tell me what you think Black should now play. If you had Black's position and you could attack, how would you do it? What would you do? f4. Nice. f4 looks really good. f4 would probably force the knight to retreat, and then you could continue the attack. Knight d4. Ooh, very nice. The knight jumps in the middle of the board, but be careful. Black is ready to jump with his knight to do the d5 square. The knight on d4 may not be adequately defended. Bishop h6, f4, g5, etc. I like that. I am nobody, really. I like that very much. One of the things that we have to understand when we're attacking is sometimes we become enamored with our own pieces. That is to say, we look at this knight on e5 and we think to ourselves, it's such a real beauty. We fall in love with it and we don't think about the other pieces. The knight on e5 is simply excellent. But in some ways, the pieces behind the knight are blocked. In particular, this bishop on g7, man. Ooh, this bishop on g7, it wants to get in the game. This knight is not leaving anytime soon. The bishop does a good job. It patrols the open diagonal. It protects the king. However, the bishop is also a very powerful attacker. And with the move bishop h6, the bishop has a new diagonal on which to work, and it does so with a gain of tempo. Think about a starting position for a moment. Imagine White plays the move bishop f4, followed by e3. He doesn't even think about it. The bishop comes outside of the pawn structure before the move e3 is even made. Oops, go back. Now we jump to our position with the move bishop e. You know, by the time I go home, I'm going to be really good with this mouse and keyboard. In the game, Black played the move f5, f4, and I found this to be a very disturbing move. It really annoyed me when I first saw this game that Black would play the move f4, because it was so obvious to me that you don't block in the bishop. You don't go d4, d5, e3, blocking in the bishop. You go d4, d5, bishop f4, like the London system, and then play e3. So for me, this move f4 was a really bad move, and it was a bad move. This is not a perfect game. It's an inspiring game. But with the move bishop e3 check, Black would have had a huge and possibly winning advantage. The game really plays itself. g5. Before I go ahead, please tell me, after this move g5, what are Black's two attacking ideas? Please give for me two attacking ideas. I'll wait. I'll drink my coffee. You find two attacking ideas that this move g5 introduces. We've got some people with their thinking caps on. Rook f6, rook h6. Bravo, absolutely. Caveman baby, extreme Dota, you're absolutely right as well. g4, g3, give me mate. And if after g3 white plays his pawn to h3, well, then comes just the blasting bishop sacrifice, bishop takes h3. Also, the move g4 introduces the idea of rook f6, the rook up and over, the rover, the rook up and over. With the rook on f6, then the idea of queen takes h6 check, followed by rook h6 checkmate exists thanks to this bishop, which should be outside the pawn chain, not inside. For example, if the line continues knight d5, g4, knight g1, g3, h3, you got to stop mate. We have what we would call a picturesque, darn near perfect King's Indian defense-like attack. Black is crushing white, he's material ahead, and he's breaking through with an extremely powerful attack. Okay. Let's see, knight d5, g4, knight g1, that takes care of that one. If knight takes e3, to get rid of that bishop, g3, knight takes g3, takes, bishop takes h3, white will force through a checkmate on the h2 square thanks to this very powerful pawn on g3. So that was what Rashid missed. He should have played the move bishop e3. He did not. Played f4, knight e2, and g5 now. This gave Palu a chance of organizing his defenses. Knight d5. Fiddle faddle. I did it again. One, I hit the... Oh man, this is really bad. I hit just one key and it goes immediately to the end of the line. Queen d2, f4, knight back, g5, knight d5, g4. Um, well, as we can see, black is just crashing through, and Polygaevsky was forced to weaken his king side with the move g3. Imagine that Paulo had captured on g4. How would you respond? Question for the audience. How would you respond to f3 takes g4? Don't Cry Wolf suggests f3. Y Milkhouse suggests f3. Knight takes g4. Knight takes g4. I see a lot of knight takes g4s. Knight takes g4. F3. Bishop takes g4. Yeah, baby. Well, as it turns out, every single one of those suggestions wins. Congratulations. I mean, if you wanted to play f3 after g3, you can't capture knight takes. Here, you're just destroying black. Black is destroying white's king side. And if you play g3, queen here, knight takes g4, completely winning. If you wanted to play knight takes g4, take a bow, h3 to stop the checkmate. Now comes f3, rip, snarl, tear, captures, again, lots of winning moves. I think this is the simplest one. The bishop is ready to capture, the rook is ready to come in, the knight is ready to come in. Everything is winning. And if you wanted to play bishop takes g4, again, just take a bow. F4, f3 is on black's agenda, and this is just an absolutely crushing position. Just look at the attacking forces arrayed on the king side versus white's forces more or less on the center and the king side. So after g4, g3, takes. Rashid posted up his queen very nicely on the h3 square. He's ready to smash through on f3. And don't even think about a move. Oops, not that one. Sorry. Don't even think about a move like knight f4, because this would be simply checkmating. So, f4. f4. Nice. Nice. f4. Your turn to play. What would you do with black? What would you do with black? If you want to play knight f3 check, rook takes, pawn takes would be completely winning. But knight f3 check, king f2, do you have a powerful follow-up? Yes or no? And what about your pieces? How do you get them into the attack? Knight f3 check, knight f3 check. Bishop takes f4. Well, are you sure that bishop takes f4? You've got enough attackers? Rashid played, in my view, a really, really fantastic move. And you've always got to ask yourself the question, what are my pieces doing? In this particular moment, black's pieces, the rook on a8, as well as the bishop on c8, are not doing enough. White wants to capture this knight. White wants to force this knight to capture the bishop or to play knight f3 check. The move bishop e6 sets up that in case of captures, Black wants to recapture and then splat with the bishop coming to e3. So the move bishop e6 actually prevents white from capturing the knight, and the bishop retreated to the c2 square. Okay. Now the table is being set. Black is bringing more pieces into the game. Black has made fantastic inroads on white's castled king position. Now, give me some suggestions, not just one, but give me some suggestions for what Black should do. More pressure, rook f7, Japanese tutor. I love the way you're thinking. Fantastic. More pressure. Give me another ideas. More ideas. Rook f7, defend c7, bring the last piece from a8. Love it. I am nobody really. Knight to f3 check, obviously, so that after knight f3 check, king f2, you would play knight b4. Now that's an intriguing move. Knight b4. The problem is maybe knight takes b4, and you need some really nice follow-up ideas. Knight g6, retreating. Knight g6, be careful, white might play knight takes c7. Bishop takes f4, g takes f4, g3. Love that idea. The problem with bishop takes f4 is maybe this knight on d5 would recapture on f4. Okay. For those of you who wanted to play rook f7, take a bow. I think that this is a really good move, as it's a quiet move. It just stops in the middle of all the action. You defend the pawn on c7. You prepare to double up the rooks on the f-file. It is just a wonderful move, and I really like the move. The only problem is it's a mistake. Oh, hate that. As pretty and as powerful and as beautiful a move as it is, it's not a good move. Black didn't need to be so refined in his approach. Black could have been brutal. Black could have just simply captured this knight on d5. Doubtlessly, both players were influenced by the fact that the queen would recapture on d5 with a check, and they thought, no, I want to do something much more aggressive and good than queen, and then allowing the queen takes to d5. In fact, if they had thought just a little bit longer and said, okay, but now after the move rook f7, what is white's next turn? Like, what can white do? White can never capture this knight. Oops, that will just be mate in one. If you, Black also wants to play the move knight b4, attacking the bishop, attacking the queen. And if you play bishop c3, well, then just rook e8. Flushes the king out to the e3 square. Exactly in this position, what should black play? What's a good move for black now? What's a good move for black right here, right now? Rook e5, that's an interesting move. Bishop f4, wow. So bishop takes f4, g takes f4. This is way too complicated, you think? You think? There you go. Court Manson was the first to spot it. Bravo, Court Manson. Knight e7 attacks the queen. And after queen e6, knight f5 check. It's a long variation, but it's breathtaking and it's really wonderful. Takes, takes, takes. White tries to turn the tables with the move bishop f5, attacking this pawn on g4, defending the pawn on e6, queen h5, king e4, queen e8. With a winning position for black. Black's threat is to capture this pawn, and white's king, unfortunately for white, is going to be sacked. For example, just to show one sample variation, this is a terrible position for white, pardon me. Okay, so now we have to go back to this position, and after bishop takes d5, there was the other recapture, c takes d5. Okay, now what should black play? Give me an ideas, give me some good moves. What should black play? Knight b4, knight f3, knight b4, knight f3. Well, it turns out that, in fact, rook takes f4 is absolutely, absolutely brutal. Ooh, rook takes f4. What's the idea? What would black play after g3 takes f4? Yes, exactly. g3. g3 with the threat of mate, and black is completely winning. What about, hold on. Doesn't want to go backwards. Okay. What about knight takes f4? What's the winning continuation now? Should be pretty straightforward for you. But does bishop f, queen nick tab, and emotil v, queen takes g3. Absolutely. I want to mention one variation here, knight g2. I mention it only as a demonstration. While the knight can be a great defensive piece, it can also be extremely awkward and clumsy. It turns out that on the chessboard, we know that the prime squares for knights are f3 and c3 on the chessboard. We know that from the very first lesson in the whole master class. Turns out the worst squares for knights are the fianchetto squares, g2 and b2, g7 and b7. These are the worst squares. And in this particular case, do you see the mate? Do you see the checkmate that black can play? Yes. Thank you very much. There it is. Bishop e3 check. You have to give the rook, you have to blockade with the rook, because if you move the king, there's the checkmate I was referring to. And we know that the prime squares for black are f3 and c3. And I just love this example of an attack because we get to use the prime square. Queen takes f3, g takes f3, rook a1 to f1. What's the checkmate? What is the checkmate? Yeah. Queen takes g2. Happy times indeed. Very, very, very nice variation. This variation all comes from, in this moment, Rashid played the move rook f7, which again is this very, very hard move to annotate because it's such a powerful move. It's a beautiful move. It's a quiet move in the midst of the entire battle. All it does is prepare to bring more pieces into the attack. But it would have been even more beautiful if Rashid had played bishop takes d5, c takes d5, rook takes f4, and absolutely annihilated White's castled position. Actually, I think there was one other move that I needed to analyze that I did not, and that was this. But again, once we get our pawn to g3 with this threat of check and mate, black is winning. Okay, played rook f7. And now, this move allowed Polygaevsky, let me just check, Polygaevsky to make to discover an incredibly resourceful idea. King f2. Whoa! And I really, really love this move a lot. Polygaevsky reasons that his king is actually facing a firing squad on the king side. White is just going to bring his rook over to f1, and he's going to discover some variation, powerful sacrifice on f4, and White's king is going to be mated. So White's king immediately just flees the scene, plays king f2, and escapes the king side while also introducing his own counter attack of rook f1 to h1, attacking black's queen, which is trapped on the king side. King comes out to e3. What a move! Bishop takes d5, c takes d5. Two knights are hanging, pieces are hanging everywhere. Knight b4. Rook h1. So black's idea is he's trying to execute an attack. Paulo is trying to execute an attack of his own. In fact, he should not have played that move. His best move was the move a3, and after trades, all three results are possible. The position is completely chaotic. But this move, rook, jeez, hate it. This move, I'm not used to this keyboard. I have a completely different keyboard at home. that I use. This move allows white to conduct a fantastic sacrifice. Rook takes f4. Holy smokes. Well, knight takes f4, that's easy. We just take and we're going to capture this knight, and we're going to be material to the good as well as having a great attack. Pawn takes f4, bishop takes f4, knight takes c2. This wins the house. So white really has no choice but to take the queen. Now, right here, I want you to put on your thinking caps and look at the position and tell me what you would do if you were black and attacking the king. Okay, c5 check, knight takes c2, rook d. Keep in mind, extreme Dota, if you take the knight, if you take on c2 and play rook d3, you'll win back the queen, but you're going to be lots and lots of material down. c5 check, d takes c6, knight takes c6, check. Love that. That looks really good. Now remember, your queen down. You could play bishop e3 check, but after king c3, the king is threatening to capture the knight. The bishop could come back with a check, but then the bishop would block the check. How about bishop g7? Bishop g7, says Milk Cow. c5 check. b5 says Crostal. Ooh. c5 check with b5 ideas. Ooh, Tweedledee. Nice. Okay, I'm seeing c5 check takes with checkmate on the next move. How could black possibly defend against that line? c5 is mate for sure. Bishop e3 check. Well, now you've got to imagine your clock is ticking. You sit here, your bishop is under attack. c5 check. Is it mate? Are we sure? Rashid played the beautiful, quiet move, just bishop g7, and again, breathtaking. It really has our admiration, but unfortunately, it's not the right move. For those of you who wanted to play c5 check, congratulations. Captures on c6, en passant, that's forced, but what's your follow-up now? What do you do exactly here? Knight takes c6. By the way, there are two knights in the position. So knight takes c6, you have to tell me which knight. bc6. Knight on b4 takes c6. So knight b4, king d5. Now, how are you trapping this king? Black wants to capture this knight. White wants to capture the knight. White wants to capture the bishop. I don't see a checkmate immediately. Like, check. We forced the king all the way up the board, but don't see the checkmate. maybe king s, maybe bishop e3. Ooh. So what are you going to do? This is the situation. What are you going to do for black? Knight on e takes c6, check. Okay, so that after king e5. What about b takes c6? How do we stop the mate? So after I have to play bishop d3, you could take. But is this the convincing win? So if we could capture with this knight, and if king c4 wasn't available, imagine, the hint was too strong for Phil the Destroyer. Phil the Destroyer got it right away, b5. By taking control over the c4 square, you're simply threatening this check and mate. There's no choice. White has no choice. White has to play the move bishop to d3. There's no choice. Now what should black play? Come on. Want to see some good ideas here suddenly for black. Bishop g7, not bad. Bishop g7, rook takes d3. Rook takes d3. Everybody wants, but remember, you're queen down. You're queen down. Bishop e3 at king c3. Who knows? The king might escape. Knight takes. Which knight? Everybody says knight takes, but what does that mean? Knight on b4 takes what, Phil the Destroyer? Knight on b takes d3? Okay, well, knight on b takes d3. I'm not forced to give up my queen. Maybe I'll move my king. Knight e, that rocks, and that's what I'm talking about. Now you're rocking. Check. No choice. Black to play. What should black play? Yeah. Now bishop g7. You bet. Black to play. Thank you, Milkow and Big Tortoise. Rook takes d3. Check. Finally. King here. Now there's two moves. Rook takes and bishop takes. This is completely winning. Two minor pieces. Overwhelming position. And if you wanted in this position also to play the move bishop takes b2, that too would be winning, as in this line there's a win that goes like this. This actually leads to this very, very cute moment. I need a winning move for black right here. I need a winning move for black right here. You would like to, this pawn on g3 protects that knight. You would like to play rook takes, and after pawn takes, do something really wonderful like this, but it's not there. That knight on f4 needs to get its protection kicked out from under him. What should he play? Yes, fruit pocket. What a beauty. Isn't that sweet? If you take the knight with the queen, well, then check takes the queen. If you take the knight with the king, then this knight is helpless. It's going to fall to the rook. It's going to be 2 rooks and a massive number of pawns against a queen. So that would be completely winning. This is a beautiful, beautiful variation that comes from, again, this whole sequence, which is all so very, very, very forcing. In the game, Rashid did not do this. He played the move bishop g7. Again, this incredibly quiet move that just sets the table, all kinds of discovered checks, c5, the mate's not there. Now, doubtlessly, Polyugaevsky had seen these variations with b5 and was freaked out. He said, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I'll play the move a4 to stop c5, b5 ideas. This is a bad move. This is a bad move. He could have made a much better defensive effort with the move knight to g1. The variation I prepared for you is as follows. You just took a pawn. Now, knight d3 check. Discover check. All the pieces are hanging, right? King c4. Knight takes b2 check. King takes b4. Now, give me a good move for black. Give me a good move for black. Hands Live, the Ghost of Banco, both found a gorgeous move. Jerry, NS/, technical boy. Bam! Bishop c3 check. What a move! King a3. Give me another good move. Give me another good move. Why, Milk Cow? Yeah, baby. Extreme Doda. Yeah, baby. We're the best forever. Yes. Vivinsky. Look at that checkmating pattern that is being set up by Black's forces. Double exclamation mark. Bishop c3, b5. I'm not finished with you guys yet. What happens after queen d4? Sammy, just Sammy says, take that ugly queen. Okay, bishop takes d4, knight takes f3. Knight c4 check. He could take it. You could take the rook, but you could also Bishop c3. Back again, baby. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so now what happens after b4? b4, what happens now? There it is. You guys are finding the line. Oh my goodness. Salty Clown, Potzer, Gray Sky Guy, A5. Holy smokes. Talk about lifting the kimono. Threat of takes and checkmate on the A3 square. Best move, takes. Best move for black. Best move for black. What is this game? Rook takes a5 check, but then comes king b3. b4 check, king b3 as well. b4, You're missing the ideas here that there it is. For fun. You found it. You were the first to find it. And the others jumped on it as well. Kimpa, bravo. Knight c4 check. Attacking the king. Now you take the rook. By the way, that checkmate pattern has not gone away. And after, for example, rook g2, because there was the threat to take the knight, knight e3, attacks the rook, rook g1, rook takes a5 with a completely winning position. Black is material ahead, and he has a winning attack. Simply wild variations. Absolutely, absolutely fun and crazy variations. After a4, now we're talking another set of problems. Give me a winning variation. A winning move for black? What should black play now? You've seen so many of the ideas, so many of the tactics already. You should be familiar with the winning idea. Yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking. c5 check. B takes c. And now, knight takes c6 check. b5, a takes b5. That was what Lev Polyakhovsky was trying to do. Rook c8, not a bad move, pawn grubber. I think the trio and Kaya chess. Yes. B takes c6. Now you're threatening checkmate in one. Checkmate in one. The only move is bishop to d3 to give the king an avenue of an escape. Now, what did Rashid play? Knight, oof. Rook takes d3, knight takes knight, e7, rook d3, rook d. Thank you, a firecracker, as well as the chess chat. You guys were right behind one another. Galactic Starfish as well. Sumi35, you bet, baby. Knight takes d3, discovered check by the bishop. No choice. King c4. Take your time. Think it over. Think it over. We're hunting big game here. What's the move for black? What's the move for black? D5 check. Sassy stacks, 30. Well done. Jutsu, D5. Gray Sky Guy, D5. MD Torres, D5. You bet. D5. Takes. King. And now? It was always about the rook on A8. That poor rook on A8 that never entered the game now enters center stage with the move rook A8. King A5, and now knight C6. Here, Polygaevsky threw in the towel and lost one of the most beautiful games you're likely to see in the annals of chess history. After King A6, there are 3 different mates in one that could be applied. My favorite is Knight C5. Others might appreciate Rook B6, and still others might appreciate Knight D3 to B4 check and mate. This game simply inspired tens and thousands of people, but one of the things that I really want you to pull away from this game is just how black was able to attack the castled kingside position when a knight on F3 was missing.